And welcome to the sixth edition of the Albion Roar Shirt of Our Years with me, Alan Wares. I'm delighted to be joined by the campaign director from the middle, we're in the middle of Wales, which is basically the same thing. The campaign director for Football Homophobia. We welcome back Louise Englefield. Lou, how are you?
Hey, Alan, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, not having the worst lockdown ever. There are, I'm in the middle of nowhere, as you say, so I've got it fairly easy, I'm afraid.
I was going to say, because, last time we met, you were residing in Manchester. I think you've got your, we'll talk about Football Homophobia in a minute, but last time we met, you were in Manchester. You've moved to an isolated farmstead. For you, isolation is just something for everyone else to consider, isn't it?
Well, it's really funny because, when I moved here, so all my life, all my adult life, I've lived in cities, basically. Typical kind of LGBTIQ plus person. You live in cities because that's where other people are. Cities are more diverse. So you're more likely to be welcomed, and people are less likely to bat an eyelid at who you are. And so when I told people that I was going to move to the middle of nowhere, I think loads of people were absolutely horrified. And also, as you know, I'm quite a chatty person, quite, you know, like to talk to people, like friends, like to have a bit of a gas with people. So I think people were like, oh, what's going to happen to her? Is she going to be okay? But I think what it was like, living in cities, brilliant, all my life, really, really great. But sort of like towards my middle 40s, I became this complete old person and just wanted to go away.
Mid-40s? I'm astonished. You're looking well on it. So, you obviously we've all got this isolation lockdown. But let's say, as someone who's been a city dweller, someone who's actually sort of been that gregarious person around people, you've made quite a transition in your life. Even where you are now, just describe the immediate room you're in now.
Well, at the moment, you can probably see, I can't see because my eyesight's too bad and the icon's too small. But basically, I am in a barn at the moment that I'm halfway through converting, and then lockdown hit. So I've got Wi-Fi in here by the skin of my teeth. And then it's basically an old barn that was used for horses. And I've got, a load of equipment in here that I store. During the summer months, we do quite a lot of event organising and stuff. So I've got like gazebos over there, a load of, you might be able to see, I don't know if you can, there's like a ton of boxes over there from some rainbow footballs that we used as part of the month of action this year. So that's kind of where I am.
Okay, you talk about the footballs there and all the things that you're doing. Tell us about Pride Sports and more specifically Football v Homophobia.
Okay, well, Pride Sports, we set up in 2006. And we were the UK's first LGBT plus organisation that was looking at how people access sport and physical activity in the UK, how LGBT plus people were accessing sport and physical activity. And we started off, we were a tiny little organisation, and then and we worked across all sport, and we still do that, in 2012 there were some folks in Brighton who you knew, friends of Albion Roar, who set up something called the Justin campaign. Yep. And they launched a campaign called Football versus Homophobia. And then they launched it in 2010. It was like hugely successful. And by 2011, 2012, they really needed some help delivering it, because actually it was exactly what football needed at exactly the right time. So it kind of like blew up, So in 2011, I think 2012, we started working with the Justin campaign, and then we as in Pride Sports, took over the campaign fully the following year, you know. And we work internationally. We've worked at all levels of football. So yeah, that's kind of who we are.
Sure. So give us a flavour. Like you say, you've been operating as the main campaign, I guess. I mean, because there's other campaigns within football to tackle prejudice and to tackle sort of social abuse. And we're talking about the lockdown of misogyny, but also racism, which has obviously been rife in football for many years. Homophobia, which has reared its head more so, or rather the tackling of homophobia has reared its head more so. So obviously you work with various campaigns, but with yourselves, give us a flavour, even of just before lockdown, when you knew lockdown was coming, of what you were doing. For instance, this February, which is it's your month of action, isn't it?
Yeah, well, so basically, a couple of years ago, we decided that we wanted to do something specific around transphobia and around trans people taking part in sport and physical activity, because there's been like a huge amount of negative narrative about trans people taking part in sport in the media, and a lot of misinformation handed out, basically. So a couple of seasons ago, we thought, right, okay, one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to talk about transphobia. We've talked about it a bit within the Football versus Homophobia month of action, but actually we feel like we need a standalone, some kind of standalone campaign around it. So 2 seasons ago, we set up the Football versus Transphobia week of action at the end of March. And so basically we were preparing for that week, the last week of March, first week of lockdown, when I think, I can't remember the exact dates, but we started talking about social isolation. I think I went to my last meetings in London the week before, and then we were suddenly like, oh my gosh, we're going to be locked down, for this week of action. What are we going to do? And fortunately, my colleague Natalie, who heads up the campaign within the FVH team, Natalie heads up Football versus Transphobia. Natalie just came up with this really brilliant viral campaign called #BinTransphobia. And before all the kind of like all those football campaigns, football activities took off, we were kind of one of the first things that people could do. So when people started off kicking loo rolls around, we had this campaign where you had to basically kick a ball into a bin and then use the #BinTransphobia. So we had some amazing efforts from people in that week. It was just incredible.
I mean, there is a hell of a thing, as well as actually doing things, because when you've done things previously, it's been with specifically the help and the assistance and connivance of various football clubs, and not just Premier League and Championship clubs. We're talking about down the entire pyramid structure.
Yeah.
It's a societal issue, and therefore every football club can do its bit. So obviously doing things live, with the T-shirts and the footballs and what have you, this is fantastic. But this is where, obviously, at a time like now, we've known it for quite a while anyway, but this is where social media comes into its own, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, Al, as you know, from your own experience of social media, I'm thinking Liam Rosenia was
Rosa. Yes, he's been elected to the FA Council for remind me, it's the Inclusion and Diversity.
It's the Inclusion Advisory Group or Board.
Yes.
Can't remember which is the title, but you remember when you tweeted years ago that picture of him with a quote, and it went absolutely blew up.
It did. How he appreciates how the city of Brighton and Hove resonates with him, that it's so considerate of whether you're black, white, straight, gay. It's something that resonates with him, that Brighton and Hove, the city of Brighton and Hove, is something that's open and tolerant towards it. Yeah. I'm lucky in as much as that's my home city, and we don't have to worry about that sort of thing too much. There are pockets of ignorance around and about, but not everywhere has that same consideration. And all the while there is one racist, all the while there's one homophobe, the campaign goes on, and someone like Liam Rossini is actually a perfect role model for those to actually certainly be part of that board and spearhead any campaigns to tackle these prejudices in society.
Yeah, totally. But I just think, if you look at something like that, at the point, for example, that you tweeted that tweet with his quote that he had made on your show, it massively blew up because at that time, I think he was like one of the first professional players who'd ever said anything like that. I mean, this is, this was only like, 3 seasons ago or something, 4 seasons ago, wasn't it?
Absolutely,
yeah. So it's kind of like,
well, I think he also got it from his father. I mean, Leroy Rossini, his father has actually got a Gong from Her Majesty for his work in tackling racism. So it's certainly the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree there. Now let's move on to you, Lou. Last time I saw you, we'd had a couple of beers, and we were arguing the toss about what it was going to be like when Brighton finally got round to playing Manchester City. And I haven't seen you since. I haven't seen you at the Amex when City have been down, like when you do things like, I don't know, win the Premier League title. But I've just spoiled it for everyone. You're a Man City fan. Tell us about your City sporting history.
Well, I'm actually probably the worst fan in the entire world because classically I've moved in the middle of nowhere away from my club. So the last live games I've been to have either been, although not this season, it has to be said, but previous seasons have all been away games because it's like easier for me, for example, to travel to Cardiff away, isn't it, than it is for me to necessarily get up to Manchester. But I started supporting the club in 1999, I think. Got the bug. I don't come from a big football family or anything. My family are Welsh, so they were big rugby fans. I have to say my uncle was a Liverpool fan for many years, so but not necessarily a big football family. And I got involved because a mate of mine was, dyed in the wash, blue all her life, football fan. And she just gave me the bug, she was just like, it was just completely catching, her enthusiasm.
You remember that, your rites of passage the first time, and I guess it would probably be Main Road, the first time you actually went into Main Road.
Yeah, I can really remember. I can't remember the game, to be honest, because I'm absolutely rubbish at remembering.
You're not Stato.
No, not at all. I'm like the opposite of a Stato. I'm like a forgetto. It's just terrible.
Actually, I'm just thinking, probably about 99. You'd only just come up from the 3rd division, so probably not totally fair to call you fair weather, but it had to start at some point.
Well, I remember, and I can't remember what season this was or anything, but I remember getting dumped out of the FA Cup by Norwich on like a Sunday, really late afternoon, driving all the way to Norwich from Manchester and then getting dumped out the FA Cup and then driving home. So I'm certainly not a glory hunter, let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Now, we are doing shirts of our years. What we're asking is everyone who comes onto this special podcast that we do to reveal a shirt that means something to them. Now, it could be a given year. It could be just their favourite shirt. Lou, you kindly obliged us. Now, I promise not to edit on the stripper music here, but could you do the big reveal for us?
I could do the big reveal, but can I just say, before I do the big reveal, Puma shirt, who sponsored our campaign this season, so lots of
them. Okay, well done, Puma.
Loyalty there. But this, hang on, let me have a look. This is the shirt that
I recognise that
I've chosen to reveal. That's basically Altringham's rainbow shirt from last season. And basically, for the Football versus Homophobia Month of Action, I mean, I could have chosen a Man City shirt, couldn't I? Let's face it. You know, I'm very. You what?
Glad you didn't.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I love this shirt. I love this shirt, and it did so much for the campaign, and it's really such a simple idea, you know.
How did it come about? Who approached whom?
Well, there's a guy at Altrincham called Jordan Timms, and he's the kind of inclusion and diversity officer voluntarily at Altrincham. And I know Jordan through some other work that we do through Pride Sports, not football work, other sports work. And Jordan got on board with the campaign a couple of seasons ago. You know, like Altrincham are really big on loads of stuff. You know, they want to make an effort. They want to be different. So he approached me and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do something in February, month of action. What shall we do?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I don't know." Came up with a couple of ideas, and then Jordan said, "Oh, I thought we might do some kind of like, I don't know, rainbow detail on a strip or something." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. You know, great idea." And then they discussed it in the club, and I don't know what the kind of processes were there, but he just, you know, fundamentally just came back to me and said, "We've decided to do our strip as a rainbow flag." And I was just like, right, okay, that's amazing. So they did, and you know, they put it out there a couple of, you know, like I think about a week before their designated game.
Do you remember vaguely the big reveal?
Yeah,
and I think about everyone in football, you know, everyone who operates within decent society in football just went, wow.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, there have been rainbow details on kits before, you know, obviously there have. But the thing about Alti was they were just like, no, our kit is going to be the rainbow flag. And there we go. You know, that was it. So, you know,
do you know how many they sold in the end then?
Now, right, Alti, if I misquote you, I'm sorry, but I think over 1,000.
Wow, that's not. I mean, I know for a fact that our sponsor, and hence us doing shirt of our years, our sponsor Phil Shelley of oldfootballshirts.com. He made a point of buying one. I think he insisted on a match worn one. I mean, he's that much of an excellent flagger. But if not, then I think he just went and bought a similar one to what you've got there. But I know that he certainly got it. I know a few people have got it. So if you'd have said 1,000, I'd have said that's extremely conservative. I'd have thought that they would have got through a lot, maybe 1,000 to their fans, but. No, I mean, it's actually already, for me, for that particular year, for that particular campaign, I thought it actually became quite an iconic shirt. I mean,
completely. And like, really, you know, it so blew up. The whole thing blew up. Like one morning, there it was on breakfast telly or something. Do you know what I mean? It was like, what's going on? You know, you like battle away.
Here I am, feeling privileged to talk to someone who's always on the box.
Oh dear.
The person is judged by the company he keeps, you know, so it's that from Maguire. So what has that shirt meant to you then?
Well, I think what it meant to me was this, which is okay, so we've been around for kind of quite a long time in football, you know, as we've said. In recent years, we've had the Rainbow Laces campaign has also come along in football, and that has had quite a lot of impact with like the Premier League at at the highest level of football. So we a couple of seasons ago we decided that we wanted to do some work in non-league football and in grassroots football. So for the last couple of seasons, our focus has been on kind of like non-league grassroots football. And it's kind of like when you're working at lower levels of football, you know, you're thinking, how many fans do Alti get to a game on a regular basis? Like, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 fans or whatever, you know, who go to matches. And yet this shirt became enormous, and it ensured that, you know, they sold shirts in Brazil, you know, in, you know, all over the world, absolutely all over the world. And in, you know, and it supported the campaign. So it got, you know, in a way that you could not imagine that a non-league club could create this kind of like global impact. It was just incredible, you know, and just shows that if you're brave and inventive, you can make a massive impact, you know.
And reap your rewards for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
we're gonna sort of start wrapping this up soon. But obviously, you talked about the history of football v homophobia, and how it's sadly still very important in society. I mean, so if anyone does want to get involved with football v homophobia, whether it's through their own club or through you, how do they do so?
They can drop us an email to info@footballversushomophobia.com. They can contact us on Twitter. You know, our DMs are open on Twitter, so it's at FVH tweets on Twitter. You know, we're also on Facebook. Can't remember what that is. Just have a look for Football v Homophobia, and we're on Instagram as well. So, you know, just reach out to us. There's loads of ways to get in touch.
So moving forward, I mean, we're not going to be in this lockdown forever. Hopefully, you know, the end of we haven't quite got the light at the end of the tunnel switch back on yet. But I'm looking forward. I mean, society as a whole, of which obviously football's a very important part of it. The society as a whole has kind of hit the pause button a little bit, and we've quite a lot of us have had a time to look around and reflect and consider who we are and what it is we're doing as a nation and as a society and what have you. So I don't know if you've had any time to consider and think about this, but moving forward from the day that the lockdown finishes, and how will society and therefore the work of football v homophobia be affected compared to what's gone before? Have you given any thought to that?
I think that it's going to be a really interesting time, because prior to this, you know, coronavirus sort of situation, what we've had in the UK over the last couple of years has been a significant rise in hate crime, a significant rise in reporting of homophobic, transphobic, biphobic hate crime, and, you know, racist hate crime, you know. So we have been, for the last couple of years, in a really particular place in the UK. There's been, you know, just a rise in, you know, a rise in some quite problematic attitudes. You know, I mean, without wanting to get into a load of stuff, you know, just after the Brexit vote, you know, there were LGBT plus people in London reporting loads of abuse, saying, oh, we've got rid of Europe, we're coming for you next, and all that. So, you know, so actually it's been a really challenging time in which to work, because some of those, you know, ugly old sort of you know, discrimination has been given a bit of a voice recently, I think, again. And so what's going to be really interesting is to see whether this lockdown has made people more reflective, more thoughtful, or whether we're just going to go back to how it was beforehand, which was, you know, seeing more types of aggressive discrimination than we've seen in recent years. So that's going to be the big challenge for us, I think.
And sadly, I have to say, I think this is where Football v Homophobia and its sister organisations, and I'm thinking of Kick It Out, I'm thinking of Show Racism the Red Card, and I'm thinking of all the other sort of similar organisations. They are going to be more relevant, sadly, than ever before. But you know, and I think that it's fair to say that you have the support of the vast majority. You certainly have it of all decent society, but you have it within football of the vast majority of football fans. So you know, well done for the work you do. Naturally, us at the Albion Roar support very much the work you're doing. We're big supporters of football v homophobia. Sad that we have to be, but But we've got to say thank you very much indeed, Louise Englefield, for coming on to Shirts of Our Years on the Albion Roar.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute treat.